Welcome to Discover the Showboat, a city at sea, a collection of video tours presented by Battleship volunteers. Battleship North Carolina, an extraordinary ship that steamed into history. In these videos, enjoy the compartments, equipment, documents, and photographs, and hear the stories that celebrate the young men who proudly served on the most highly decorated American battleship of World War II, their home.
Hi, my name's Cecil Ard and I'm a volunteer here at the Battleship North Carolina. Standing in one of the more important spaces aboard ship is the space that contains the ice cream machine. This machine was made by General Electric. It's 5-gallon capacity, fairly simple to operate. First thing you need to do is start up your compressor over here. Very large compressor comparatively, so I'm imagining that thing was really loud and blew off a lot of heat and got it even hotter in here. It fed Freon into the machine, into the ice cream machine. This valve was open, this valve was open. This is your compressor feed, this is your vacuum that feeds back through. It's pumping Freon, basically is the same stuff that's in your car that cools your car. It's the same concept. You open this lid, you put your mix in there. So this is a 5-gallon capacity. You put 2.5 gallons in, you leave this lid open. There's a very important reason for that. Come over here and you push this button. This button starts a motor that starts the blades in here turning. That's your mix. When you're ready to cool it, you flip this switch and the solenoid flips and it allows the Freon to start coming through the machine and chilling your ice cream. So as these blades turn, it chills your ice cream down to a uniform 23 degrees. There's a gentleman by the name of J.L. McCullum back in the 1930s that developed the machine that could do that. This is the first type of machine that could, and apparently 23 degrees is the perfect temperature to make and freeze ice cream. The 1930s is also when ice cream was able to be bought out of your local grocery store and taken home and eaten for dinner. The way this thing works and where the magic happens is pull out your little clutch, open the door. This 5-gallon capacity, and this is the rack of blades we keep talking about here. And what these things do is this is a scraper blade, and these are basically impeller blades. And as they spin in here, this is closed, it pulls air in, and it's like whipping cream. So you put 2.5 gallons of mix in here. It could be either a dry mix or a liquid mix. We'll talk a little bit more about those later. And if you do it right, it will expand that mix, and you'll end up with 5 gallons of ice cream. And what the soft serve is if you go into a restaurant, kind of like McDonald's or other chains, and you have the machine in there that you pull, and it kind of lets this little swirly out, and it's soft, that is soft serve ice cream. Once the mix is done, it takes about 15 minutes or so. You open this up, and you actually will let it extrude out. And the book says it should extrude out like a ribbon. It goes into this 5-gallon can. So remember, it's at 23 degrees, right? We're on a battleship that can average over 100 degrees very easily. So what they do is they put it into this cabinet. This is called a hardener. This operated at minus 15 degrees. So it took that 23 degrees ice cream and hard froze it at minus 15. If you let it lay in here for about 6 hours or so, it basically turned into a brick. It's a much easier way to preserve it. So there were 2 base mixes. Remember we said we had to put 2.5 gallons into this machine to get 5 out. So the manual for the machine recommended 2 base mixes. One was fluid mix and the other was dry mix, and that would depend on available resources. So the fluid mix was 2 gallons of cream, 3 pounds of sugar, 17 pounds of powdered milk, 2 quarts of water, and 2 ounces of gelatin as a thickening agent. The dry mix would be 6 pounds of sugar, 11 ounces of powdered eggs, 4 pounds of whole powdered milk, 8 ounces of cornstarch as a thickening agent, 1.5 ounces of salt, 11 quarts of water, and 2 ounces of vanilla. Sometime later in the war, they started shipping out ready-made dry mix, which is what is in this can. This is a 2.5 gallon mix, so it would actually, I'm sorry, it's a 1.25 gallon mix. So it would take 2 of these to make 2.5 gallons to feed the machine. This is not the original ice cream machine or the original space for the ice cream machine. The original was over in the soda fountain, and this space was opened up and you had crew seating in here. You had these green tables like we have out in the rest of the seating areas, and this was a storage area for garbage going into the garbage grinder. However, the ice cream was so popular and was so good for morale, they thought it better to enclose this space, put a larger machine over here, shorten the grinder space, and take the tables out of here so there was capability of producing a lot more ice cream. So, you've been in here working hard, you produced all this ice cream. What are you going to do with it? Where does it go? Well, the largest consumer of ice cream aboard is, obviously the soda fountain, about 20, 30 feet away from us over here. They opened every day that the ship was in service, and if the ship was physically at sea, they were open twice a day. Lines were always long. They could sell up to a pint, or basically actually as much as you were willing to pay for. Probably the second largest consumer is going to the general crew for dessert, as in just a scoop of ice cream on a tray, or a la mode on a piece of apple pie. We have a collection of menus that kind of show us that they average getting ice cream about 2 to 3 times a week. The one you're seeing now is from September of 1944, and it does indicate that those guys got ice cream 3 times that week. Officers also enjoyed ice cream, so they have a separate kitchen, and they also have a separate dining area called the wardroom. There were 130 to 140 officers on board, and they actually paid for their own meals. Looking at some of the ledgers we have, it looks like they averaged about $30 a month for meals. So it gave them a little bit of leeway as to what they wanted and what they had on their menu. And it was December of 1945, they ordered 173 gallons of ice cream and a gallon of chocolate syrup. Another use of ice cream is holiday meals. Now you might say, you just told us about the crew meals, what's different from the holiday meals? Well, for holidays, the ship went through the time, effort, and expense to produce really nice holiday menus. These were given to the crew, and they could be kept as souvenirs, or they could be sent home to share. So imagine a mom sitting out in the Midwest somewhere. She hasn't seen her son in a couple of years. All she knows is he's out in the Pacific on a ship. She goes to the mailbox one day, she pulls out this nice card, opens it up. It's a menu of really good food, flips over on the back and gets a little note that says, "Hey Mom, I'm doing well, they're feeding us well." Some of the menus you'll see actually were donated back to the ship, and they are the originals. Ice cream is also used as a reward. So there were friendly competitions on board. The guys would drill, they would run gunnery drills, loading drills, and it was to promote unity and teamwork and to improve skills. A lot of times the winning teams would receive ice cream, also sports competitions, they could give them for that. And there were excellence awards on board, and a lot of times when crews or in different areas earned an excellent award, they could be rewarded with ice cream. So North Carolina also had a special relationship with smaller ships, destroyer escorts, and the fact that we could store over 2 million gallons of bunker C, which is the fuel that they use for the burners to boil the water, to make the steam, to make the ship go. Well, the smaller ships also had to make steam, but they could not carry as much fuel as we did. Like I said, we carry about 2 million gallons, so every couple of weeks they would have to come alongside a ship and refuel. North Carolina, 2 to 3 times a week, was refueling destroyers offside. When destroyers came along to refuel, they would pull the band up on deck and they would play. Sometimes they would send ice cream over to the ships as bargaining or trading chips. Destroyers would bring mail, they would transfer movies over, and also if they had parts they needed machined or repaired, we had a machine shop we could repair. We had doctors on board, dentists on board. If there were any issues on the smaller ships that did not have doctors, then they could transfer over and be treated here and then transfer back. Another interesting thing about the smaller ships is destroyers were normally used occasionally destroyer escorts, to recover pilots off of aircraft carriers, and often they would ransom those pilots for ice cream. There's one story when a pilot said that he figured out what his worth was. It was 10 gallons of ice cream. So there was one more instance where ice cream played a really, really huge role in North Carolina in relating to a destroyer. So the USS Kidd is a brand new, right out of the box Fletcher class destroyer, came out of the Panama Canal, went to Hawaii. Mid-September of '43, North Carolina sailing back to Pearl for repairs, and battleships never traveled alone. They always had escorts, 2-3 destroyers that went with them. They would fan out around them in a circle or however, depending on the number, and they would screen out, look for, if there were any aircraft out there, they would try to go see what it was, snoop it out, and they would look for submarines and different things. So destroyer being a new crew, Kidd being a new destroyer, having a new crew aboard, they were sent to come out and meet the North Carolina's escort van and turn around and escort her back in. Well, North Carolina had been out in combat for a while. They were crossing the Pacific. It's also, a chance to kind of see where the North Carolina was at and get a little training. The idea was the Kidd's going to come along. It's going to be a new destroyer that joins the escort van, and it's going to actually come in on a simulated torpedo run. And what was supposed to happen is when the Kidd comes in, they're supposed to come into the North Carolina, charge in. They're going to have to come in between 6-8 miles because the torpedoes we had at the time just were not very good. They weren't replaced till '44. Going to come in, going to make a turn, going to parallel the course of the North Carolina, drop torpedoes. After they fire the torpedoes, turn back out away, start making smoke, and go in a frantic zigzag pattern, try not to get hit. North Carolina is supposed to detect the Kidd coming in. They're supposed to call general quarters. They're supposed to illuminate the Kidd and figure out, or whatever the ship is coming in, and figure out what the ship is before they actually start shooting at it. So what had happened was, Kidd comes in, they make their turn. As they're making the turn, North Carolina had discovered them. They had called general quarters. Everybody was ready. They're supposed to fire illumination rounds. These illumination rounds come out of the 5-inch mounts. They're supposed to go 1,000 feet above and 1,000 feet beyond whatever it is you're trying to illuminate, so you can silhouette it, get a good look at what it is, make sure it's not friendly before you start firing at it. Well, these offsets are set by computer, and they have to be manually put in because all the computer knows is this is my target, this is what I want to hit, so you have to tell it not to. Well, good news was that the range was actually set 1,000 feet beyond where the Kidd would be when the round got there. However, the elevation up was not. So North Carolina fires 5-inch illumination rounds, which illumination round is a blue round with a white star on the top. And as it gets out to where it's supposed to go, there's a mechanical fuse on it that blows a parachute with a white phosphorus flare underneath it, and it glows really bright and really hot and floats down from the sky. So they fired the illumination rounds, and they actually hit the Kidd with them. Fortunately, the range was set to go beyond the Kidd, so they did not explode in the Kidd. Nobody was seriously hurt. There was one sailor that they were running drills, and he was strapped into a Stokes basket, and they were taking him up a ladder, and a round passed close enough to his chest that he actually had a scratch off of a piece of something off of it. Well, Kidd was scheduled to come along the next morning and fuel. So the bakery worked all night. These guys baked a really nice cake, and they put a Purple Heart on it, and they made it large enough to feed, the 300 people on the Kidd. This space worked and produced 50 gallons of ice cream that they passed over to the Kidd when she came along the next morning. They also threw the Kidd a beach party when they got back to Pearl Harbor, and apparently all was forgiven. So the reason I'm in here interpreting this space is this is the first space that I got involved in actually physically restoring. A can of Mother's polish, my thumb, and a rag. Kept passing by here looking at the faceplate of this thing. And it's not really shiny now because we haven't been able to get to it for a while. But I kept passing by, and it was just dark and didn't look nice. I thought it was brass. So I came in, I started polishing on it. It started shining up, and I'm like, look at this nice brass faceplate. Well, the more I polished, the brighter it got, and I thought at one point I broke it because it got really shiny, and then I figured out they'd cosmoline this thing too. And I just kept working with it, and it came out as a really nice chrome. And then I started working on these cabinets, taking the hardware off, polishing them out, and by the time I finished, it actually looked fairly nice in here. Everyone was pleased with it, and so that started my career, so to speak, restoring spaces around the ship. So I'm pretty proud of this one, even though it was fairly simple. It was my first.
Thank you for watching Discover the Showboat, a collection of videos from the Battleship North Carolina in Wilmington, North Carolina. Visit us online at www.battleshipnc.com. The Showboat welcomes visitors daily. In 2020, the Battleship North Carolina received an NC Cares Humanities Relief Grant from the North Carolina Humanities Council, www.nchumanities.org. Funding for NC Cares has been provided by the National Endowment for the Humanities as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act Economic Stabilization Plan.